Welcome back. This is the morning show here on Signature TV. So it's a lovely Thursday, the 5th of June, and it's really another day down the losses in Mokwa, Niger State. It's so unfortunate what has happened there. For the first time in 60 years, that area experienced a flash flood that took over 500 lives. It is a monumental disaster. And everyone's been talking about the issues. Now, the flood has happened, but then again, how about the people who are left without homes? How about the diseases that might most likely crop up that access? Because of course there are always damages that's associated with floodings and incidents like this. We have with us to unpack these issues Mr. Ikemefuna Anuchauka. He is a legal and WASH policy and institutional development expert. He's live with us via Zoom platform. Good to have you. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, good morning. And thanks for having me.
I really don't know how to, unpack what happened in Niger. I mean, if you would say that area used to have flooding in the past, you could say maybe it was expected, but this flash flood wasn't expected at all. And it came and swept the entire place. And the residents there are reeling with this devastation. Do you think that there's anything at all that would have given them a sign that this devastation is coming?
Okay, thank you. To start with, you call it flash flood. A lot of times it doesn't give anybody notice. But that is the reason why we have, let me first of all say that in Nigeria, one of the major natural disasters that we experience, is flooding. We don't have the likes of the hurricanes, the tornadoes, and the earthquakes, and what have you. And that's why we have institutions of government, that are responsible for providing the focus, the early warnings, that are needed and that are, critical for preparedness. Like NIMET, you have the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, which released the forecast, I think, sometime in April. And then they name the states and even the local governments, that flooding is likely going to happen. Yeah, but the thing there is these institutions of government, that are responsible for providing these warnings, providing the forecast, and the ones that are actually supposed to, provide either preventive or mitigation services, whether they are capacitated to do what they are supposed to do. So the Mokwa experience is very disheartening. Nobody expected it, and now a whole community has been flattened. At the moment, what is going on is trying to see how to recover and to restore that community at the moment. So it's really something to worry about. And this is not the first time we're experiencing this in Nigeria. You remember what happened in Maiduguri last year? Last year, September 10 precisely, the Alau Dam, caved in. That was a dam built in 1986. And in 1994, I think during General Abacha's military regime, there was a collapse of that dam. It was rebuilt, and then 30 years down the line, which was last year, September, the dam also caved in again due to the intensity of rainfall. You see, this flooding will continue because of the times we are in. Climate change is real. And if as a country we don't rise up to the occasion and understand this fact and do what needs to be done, we'll continue, doing this reactive approach that we normally do. I would say that, yes, it has happened in Mokwa, but as a country, did we know that we were going to have flooding this year? Yes, the forecast was provided, early warnings were given, but the preparedness side of it is another thing that maybe that would be another conversation.
Now, the flood has happened, and so many persons who have been saying things. I mean, beyond the relief materials that the government has, proposed, because we all know that some of the times, some of this, products given by government sometimes, finds its way into some private pockets, as the case may be. But beyond that, we know that disease-related drainages. I mean flooding rather. There are diseases that might crop up from these kinds of flooding. Can you enumerate that and what can be done immediately in order to stem that tide?
Talking about diseases, once flooding happens, we have two types of, risks. You have the natural risk like flooding, you have the human induced risk. One of the things that causes flooding, one, I mentioned climate change. Two, irresponsible waste management is another thing. And then most cities in Nigeria don't have good drainage systems. And when you have flood, what happens? Look at the whole community has been flattened. Flattening a community means bridges were washed away, houses were washed away, even sanitary facilities, were also washed away. So, and then imagine the kind of sanitary sanitation practices that we have in the country at the moment. 2025 was the year set for open defecation free status in Nigeria. But I can tell you that at the moment, about 48 million Nigerians are still defecating in the open. And this figure has been projected, to be that by 2030, it could even rise to 60 million Nigerians defecating in the open. So you can imagine. So when you have flooding like this, it washes toilet systems, it washes everything, both human and animal excreta, everything washes into the rivers. And there is also seepage, filtration of this contaminated water into the underground water systems, for people who would want to go take water from maybe drill a borehole. So it's really something to worry about. Public health concerns are there. Even graves, are also being washed away. You saw the one that happened last year in Meduguri. Even a prison facility was washed away. Over 200 inmates ran away. And so when flooding like this happens, it's not just about destruction of properties. There is also the public health concern because the water washes everything. Everything. It washes everything. And it washes it into the river. And then people go to the same river to take water for domestic use. Like I said, also some parts of the contaminated water also finds its way into the underground water system. So that is the reason why you see this issue of corruption is also very critical. I see the federal government intervention about 2 billion naira to rebuild the bridges and provide support to the displaced persons, and even the Niger State government is doing a lot. I also see that the Ministry of Water Resources, they're also trying to see how they can provide potable water to the displaced citizens or persons affected by this Mokwa incident. So the public health concerns are there. So you would expect that a lot of people will suffer all kinds of diseases from the water. If they don't get adequate or potable water to drink, it could result in frequency in and out of the hospital, because flooding is not a good thing. The public health concerns are there. Like I said, we don't have good waste management systems in the country. Open defecation is still right. People still urinate in the open. Animals still defecate in the open. So all manner of, you would expect all manner of public health challenges because of this flooding that has also happened. And so, as government is, providing intervention, they should also look at the public, health side of things. Yeah, it's good that people have to eat, have to drink water, but they should also know that this comes with it some really, really public health challenges. They're not manifest now, but I can assure you that in the shortest possible time, these public health issues will begin to rear their ugly heads.
Yeah,
and really, it calls for concerted efforts. Emergency management is everybody's business. The water sector, the health sector, all hands must be on deck to make sure that proper mitigation and restoration is done. At these critical points in time.
absolutely. I mean, you've pointed out these issues and they are quite germane, especially as it relates to public health risks. I'm just thinking to myself, how on earth would this community survive this? And what do you actually advise? Do you think that everybody should leave that environment? Maybe they should be evacuated to some camps that would have some of these facilities, at least for the meantime, pending when these places are rebuilt? Or you advise that they should remain there and then have this facility built right there. Because I'm just imagining the situation like you mentioned. If someone wants to ease themselves, where are they going to use? If somebody wants to drink potable water, of course, that facility is no longer there. I mean, the flood washed practically everything, farmlands, food crops, food items, people's monies, people's buildings, properties. And then you wonder really, how do they start even rebuilding themselves? Aside the trauma of losing everything that you own, and then the trauma of, in fact, going forward, trying to have a pathway to a life that, you once had.
Okay, yeah, it's really worrisome, but whatever needs to be done has to be done. When people, because a lot of people now is a community of, I think they're about 300,000 population. So what should happen now is that they need to be, relocated, moved to safer grounds if there are camps where government can put them, because it is actually more expensive. It doesn't, it takes a lot of resources, to manage disaster situations like this, because there's no way the people of Mokwa community would remain there and see the rebuilding actually take place. I mean, if the whole community has been flattened, homes have been washed away, properties destroyed, the only thing that the government can do at the moment is to relocate them. And that would require a lot of resources. I think I've read in the news, the effort that government is making. The internally displaced persons camps in United States may not even be able to enough to contain everybody. But you see what happened in Maiduguri last year. People were even moving to neighboring communities, to find a refuge and shelter. So government really needs to come in now. What is important now is to preserve, the lives of the citizens. I mean, Section 14, Sub 2B of the Constitution. Safety and the welfare of the people is the primary essence of government. So government really needs to play that role now. And then the people have a fundamental right to live. The right to live is also guaranteed and enshrined in our Constitution. So government would just have to play that role. Whatever resources that government can, muster at this point in time. I see the Niger State government is reaching out to, development partners, international networks, and everything. The federal government is also intervening, and so all hands are actually on deck. So the people just have to, leave that scene, and then government would see how to speed up. Reconstruction and rehabilitation of all that the flood has washed away. You see, about 2 bridges actually went down. So there has to be, connectivity, road connectivity. People should be able to, move around and things like that. So the rebuilding process should start now, but people should be evacuated from that area so that proper planning of that community can actually be done. Because one of the problems we also have is just like when they say urbanization is one of the reasons we have flooding. Yes, it's because houses are just springing up everywhere. And then when you look at it, that even 2 bridges were washed away, then you question what's going on in the building and construction industry. Building codes actually followed. Are their standards? As standards actually followed, because they allowed them in Borno State, for example. Built in 1986 and 1994, it caved in 2024, it also caved in again. So it really leaves so much, little to be desired. So these are things, we need to look at this whole thing holistically to ensure that infrastructure that we're even putting in place are, climate resilient, because climate change has come to stay. So, and not just rebuilding. If you rebuild 2 bridges and then another flood comes and then it washes it away, it doesn't make economic sense. So, to answer your question directly, yes, the people must be evacuated so that the rebuilding process can actually start.
But then, if you talk about the building process, speaking of the future, do you think that there's anything that can be done for those in Mokwa in case that happened, the rebuilding process happens and then they return back to their community? Because we know that this is a flash flood and it never happened before. It's more than 60 years, since anything of that nature happened. They never expected it. And now, if they go back, do you think that some things can be done in order to mitigate against the flood, for future purposes?
We have the National Emergency Risk Management Policy. Yeah, that actually talks about the integration of disaster risk management in development planning, and then the issue of capacity building for the responsible agencies, and then I think stakeholder engagement and the community participation. Yes, and it also highlights the fact that there has to be preventive approaches. There has to be approaches for mitigation, preparedness, response, and then recovery. So to answer your question, yes, a lot needs to be done, because if Niger State is one of those states that is prone to flooding, then what it means is that government has to be proactive and not reactive. Niger State, for example, has about 3 dams. It has the Shiroro, it has the Kainji, and it also has the Jeba Dam, right? And then one of the problems with the Arlau Dam in Borno State that even made it to Kevin was because it was silted up. And if a dam is silted up, what it means is that it also reduces its capacity to store water. So the Niger State government and the federal government should look at the dams that we have in Niger State at the moment, whether they are operating at full capacity. If they're operating at full capacity, meaning that they are not silted up. So, its capacity to store more water, is there. The government should also look at, the drainage system. Are there enough drainage systems, to channel the flood water when it comes? In case we have, like now, because of climate change, we have the intensity of rainfalls, high precipitation. Within a few minutes or hours, you could have a flash flood. So drainage systems is okay, and then looking at waste management in the state, yeah, that also needs to be looked at. I know there are agencies of government whose responsibility, it is to manage waste in the state. Are they doing what they're supposed to do? Look at the local government. Section 7 of the Constitution says elected local government council. The situation of local governments right now in the country, and if you also look at the fourth schedule of the Constitution, particularly paragraph 2C. You see the responsibility of the local government in terms of managing public convenience, sewage, and even refuse disposal. So, do we have local governments that have elected council members and that they are doing what they are supposed to do constitutionally? Under Section 7, I think sub 5, the houses of assemblies can also give them additional functions. So, we should also let the local governments to play their role as a third tier of government. So it has to be a community approach, not just doing one thing and leaving the other. All hands must be on deck. The Nigerian Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, both the State Emergency Management Agency, the local governments, all hands must be on deck. Like I said, solid waste management is very critical, and making sure that the natural waterways are not disrupted, by buildings springing up here and there. So if you see that this is where flood normally passes and someone will go and build an estate there, so what do you expect? So these things need to be looked at holistically. And even during the dry season is the best time to put some of this infrastructure in place. Not when the flood actually comes, then you start running up and down. So it's a whole lot that government needs to do. If today is more quiet, tomorrow it can be another community. So the government needs to be on the proactive side, not on the reactive side. Because if it happens, well, we can only condole with families that have lost their loved ones. We can only show sympathy, make available palliatives and all manner of humanitarian assistance. But some of these things, we can actually nip them in the bud. Where we cannot prevent, at least we can mitigate. And when the early warnings come, preparedness should not be, taken lightly. So I believe if we do all this, maybe the flooding might come, but it will not be as devastating as we have seen it in Mocha today.
It's almost as if you've explained that we're a country of reaction, not a country of proaction, so to speak. And it also plays in what's happening right now. Because as at the last check in the news, the people who are there, who've lost loved ones and lost properties, are complaining that relief materials are slow into Mokwa. We heard the other day that monies have been deposited, for the relief material. Then you wonder, really, this thing happened a few days ago. You would think that the next minute, so as to help the situation, especially for those who are even there still, they would, get some help. But up until this moment, people are still complaining that, this help hasn't really come. Don't you think that's a major problem, especially with our implementation?
Yes, it's a major problem, and I think now is actually the time that civil society organizations should actually play a big role, because you hear state government has created a dedicated account for mitigation for to provide all sorts of assistance to the displaced persons. But like I said before, corruption is one factor that can undermine this whole efforts that is currently going on in Niger State. So the civil society organizations, who major on following the money. There's this concept of follow the money. So we should have like an accountability framework, really, to ensure that every naira and kobo that is provided, the federal government has brought 2 billion. We need to know, in bits and pieces, how this 2 billion, blow by blow, how that money is spent, all the money is coming in. Because if the state government has commissioned, maybe some catering services to ensure that the people get food, we do not want a situation where food will be paid for 1,000 people and only 200 people, get the food. So, this is it. So the civil society organizations actually have a very, very big role to play now. There has to be, accountability, and every person that has any form of responsibility committed to them must show accountability. So that we don't find people profiting on other people's, misery. So it's really a challenge. You could hear the big figures. At the end of the day, it wouldn't translate to anything. So this is the time really to follow the money and, to make sure there is accountability in this whole humanitarian assistance and processes.
What would be our takeaways from this particular incident? Because, people would say when an incident happened, we should find a way of learning from it and endeavor not to make the same mistakes. We know that Mokwa hasn't had this type of scale of flooding in the past. Are there places that you think that we should start looking to evacuate immediately, given what we have seen in Niger State?
Yeah, Niger State is not the only state that is, flood prone in this country. We have states that are, they would like to say they are in low levels or lowlands. Like if you go to the south states like Bayelsa, like River State, Delta State, these are coastal states, and you would expect that because we have different types of flooding. You also have the coastal flood. This one in Niger State is the flash flood. The coastal flood, by the time the water levels begin to rise, and that's why you have the NISA, the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. They provide data and flood alerts when the water levels or hydrological systems start changing. So you have states like that, and the Mokwa experience should actually get our leaders to start preparing, to start thinking out of the box, because the warnings have come, the forecasts have come. So nobody would say, I didn't know that this was going to happen. But the question again is the political will there? Because if we talk about corruption, we also talk about political will. A lot of times, just like the reactive way or nature of doing things in this country, a lot of times we know that this is the problem, but we just wait until the problem comes. That's why in my place we have a proverb that says a war that has been scheduled, it doesn't consume the cripple. If you know that, okay, in XYZ day, a war is going to break out, if you can't walk, you find your way early enough before the war actually breaks. So a lot of times it's not that we are oblivious of the fact of some of this, disaster, natural disaster, but our inability or refusal to do something about it, actually gets people consumed. And then even in the north central, you have states like Benue, like Kogi. These are states on the that have major rivers around them, and they are all prone and susceptible to coastal flood. So the lessons learned from Mokwa should be that taking proactive steps is very, very important. especially when the forecast is there, the data has been provided. I see no reason why it should be taken lightly, or even such reports and data jettisoned until the disaster now happens and everybody is consumed and everybody is running up and down. Yeah, so that's why I talked about the national emergency risk management policy, which talks about prevention. Let's see how we can even prevent it. If we can't stop it because is a natural occurrence, then let's see how we can even mitigate the impact, even though it happens. So we need to be prepared at all times. A lot of times you also feel the temperature in the country. Some of these things we are talking about, are they the things that our leaders are worried and concerned about? A lot of time the agenda may differ from some of these things, but this is the whole essence of leadership. And even when you have the agencies of government, of governments that are responsible for this thing, do they have the capacity? Because if they don't have the capacity, there's really nothing much they can do. A lot of times the people even know what to do. These government agencies, they know what to do. But if they're not well resourced, they don't have the capacity to act. Then everybody sits idly by, and then we wait the disaster to come and consume everybody, and then we start running up and down. So it's a big lesson. Proactiveness. The Niger State government knew, yes, there's going to be flooding in the state, but did they really take it seriously? The Mokwa one, it hasn't happened before. Okay, it's going to happen in Niger State, but they didn't know it was going to be Mokwa. But there's something about trying to do something about it, looking at the dams, looking at the drainage systems, waste management in the state. There's a way, because like I said, it has to be a community approach. You have to look at everything all at the same time, so that even when it happens, maybe the impact will not be so much. And then also ensure that resources are available for prompt and swift response in the event that it happens.
Okay. There's also another issue that I'm looking at. I don't know whether it is called the resilience of the people, or maybe the uneducated, or people who have special ties to their land. We've seen a situation where the government wants to evacuate people from their land to some other place that is safe and better off, so that they can adequately take care of them. And because of their ancestral attachment to that area, they just practically refuse to go. In that situation, what exactly can be done?
The thing is that nobody wants to die. I believe stakeholder engagement and communication messaging should be crafted in such a way, even in local languages, because sometimes you see advertorials on big media stations and things like that. The people for whom these messages are even meant for, do they really see those messages? Even when they see it, do they really understand what it means? So I believe the issue of stakeholder management and engagement should be done in such a way that everybody is brought on the same frequency and wavelength, and everybody gets to understand that this is what the government is trying to do. I can tell you, it's only a tree that you tell that you're coming to cut it. Even if you come back in 2 years, the tree is still standing there and waiting until you come and cut it. So, the instinct of self-preservation, is real. When people say that if I do this, I live. If I don't do this, I will die. They will naturally, go for safety, because they still want to be alive. So I believe that communication here, should be done in such a way that the people will understand the hazards and the risk. It's just like living close to a dam, or living on a floodplain on a natural waterway. You can be washed away anytime. The dams can fail. If they fail and you are farming, because when you dam up a river, the tendency that, okay, somewhere around that dam you would find dry land or something like that, and then for those getting water for irrigation purposes and all that, then before you know it, you find clusters of settlements and farmlands and everything. So these things has to be properly managed. When the people don't know, is your duty and responsibility as a government to educate them, to speak to them in a language they will understand. So I believe there will be food compliance if government does the right thing, and also provide alternative. Because if you are telling them don't farm here, and these are farmers, this is the only means of livelihood. If you tell them not to farm on a certain land, then you need to provide an alternative. A lot of times it's also the failure of government to provide alternative that causes that the resistance. It's not as if the people are resisting. It's just like when you say, okay, you want to do urban renewal and you want the local settlers to live, you need to provide an alternative. You don't demolish their settlement and then you have not provided an alternative for them. So it's just a case of, government being true to itself and them doing the right thing, communicate properly, provide alternatives for the people, and they will definitely respond.
Right. What long-term strategies do you think we can implement in order to forestall this flooding? I understand that this flooding practically, beyond just the issues of human endeavors, which is not, building the drainages or cleaning your environment and allowing the waterways to flow. Are there any other long-term strategies that can be backed upon, maybe planting of trees or maybe or urbanization? Do you think that can help?
Certainly, it's all whatever strategy we may think of or may think about is still, human driven. Yeah, because deforestation, you do deforestation because of farming or because of urbanization. Yeah, you limit the ability of the natural ability of the land to absorb water and things like that. So every strategy is also human driven. Like I said, we cannot do one to the exclusion of the other. It has to be a community approach. So while we are, because we have all the frameworks, we have both the policy, legal, and regulatory frameworks, for managing the changing climatic conditions, that we have at the moment. So everything needs to be looked at. As a country, what are we doing about climate change? How are we managing emissions? Those things that are, exacerbating climate change, are we working on reducing them? So while we are talking about that at the state level, there are also policies, legal and regulatory frameworks. Have we actually operationalized these frameworks enough? Because I can tell you we do well with, policy, regulatory, and legal frameworks, but a lot of times we don't follow those things. So the long-term strategy is to begin to operationalize these frameworks that we have for managing disaster risk in the country. There is no other way. If urbanization is a problem, can we get the urban and regional and physical, planning departments of government, to actually do the right thing? Because you see demolitions going on in the country, sometimes. Was it not people that gave those people approvals? In Abuja, in Lagos, people will go and build on a drainage. Somebody approved that that building should be put there. So until we begin to do the right things, there's no other way out. If solid waste, irresponsible, environmental practices, is the reason why flooding will not stop, then the only natural thing to be done is to, embark on a better way of managing our, solid waste. Rather than having them to, rather than having them block our drainages, we manage them better. In terms of urbanization, before you do any structures, we make sure that you get the right approvals. And then when it comes to, infrastructures like the Ministry of Water Resources and then its parastatals like the River Basin Development Authorities, these are agencies of government that are, saddled with the responsibility of developing, water resources like building of dams and things like that. And then when these dams are built, because you see, you can build them for a lot of reasons. For multi-purpose reasons, maybe you want to generate power for irrigation, for domestic use. You can also build a dam, to reduce the incidence of flooding. So, and then in building that dam, we should ensure also that, we do quality infrastructure, because a lot of times these things don't have standards. Once the dam is filled to its capacity, within just like what happened in Borno State last year, that dam has caved in twice. So it goes to show that there is a problem when it comes to infrastructure development. The bridge in Mopa will be rebuilt, but the quality and the standard of that bridge is something we should even be worried about. Not just rebuilding the bridge and then another flood comes and then it washes it away again. And when you see that houses being washed away, it means that building codes and standards are not being followed. So these are the long term. There's no other way to this. Rather than the government doing the right thing rather than everybody doing the right thing. If you see this land, you like it, but they say this is a green area. It's reserved because erosion and the flood. Erosion passes through here. This is a natural waterway. Don't go and start lobbying and bribing people so that they will give you approval to go and build there. So as much as we tell government what to do, as citizens, we also need to be responsible enough not to do things that will cause problem for society.
Right. I want to say thank you so much, Mr. Ikemefuna Anuchauka, for your insight on the program. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.